There we go.
Okay, that's good. Look at us.
And Batman!
This one's mine! It's mine!
This bathtub is everything. A massive TV. You see this little wall.
Success,
I have to thank everyone from the very onset.
fame, fortune. From the outside, they seem to have it all. The mansion in Beverly Hills, the adoring fans, and the bank account most of us can only dream of.
Noticed the mood swings. Like, one day I'd be up and the next day I'd be down.
That I go home and sometimes don't want to get out of bed in the morning, and I am on a medication.
Delavigne has been open about her struggles with anxiety and depression over the years.
Simon Cowell confesses he didn't care if he lived or died as he privately battled depression.
Christina Applegate is trapped in darkness of depression 3 years after MS diagnosis.
Yet behind the cameras and behind the smiles, a silent epidemic is ravaging Hollywood's elite. In 2023, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, one of the highest paid actors in the world, revealed his third major battle with depression.
The number one goal was to play in the NFL, the National Football League, pro football, and that did not happen for me. My friends around me were making it, and they were becoming millionaires and buying their parents' houses, all the dreams that we all had, and they were living the dreams that we had, and I was not. I was actually living a nightmare. I fell into depression at that time.
And the most decorated Olympian of all time, Michael Phelps, admitted, "I felt like I didn't want to be alive anymore."
2004 was my first taste of post-Olympic depression. Coming off such a high, and it's basically you get to like the edge of the cliff, and you're like, cool, now what?
But here's what's fascinating and what nobody's talking about. While some of the world's biggest stars struggle with depression, others seem completely immune to it. So what's the difference? What do people like Donald Trump and David Goggins know that others don't? In this documentary, we're going to uncover the untold truth behind celebrity depression. We'll explore the neuroscience behind why some of the most successful people in the world seem to feel empty inside, while others seem to be unshakable. And most importantly, we'll discover how ancient wisdom combined with modern science can actually help anyone to build an unbreakable mind. This is Why Your Favorite Celebrity is Depressed, a documentary by Alex Unbreakable. Let's jump in. Picture this. It's 2008. Dwayne Johnson stands at the pinnacle of success. He's transitioned from wrestling superstar to Hollywood's leading man. His movies are grossing hundreds of millions. He has the fame, the fortune, and seemingly the perfect life. But alone in his room, he's crying constantly. Depression has him in its grip, and he doesn't even know what's happening to him. Fast forward to 2014, Michael Phelps has become the most decorated Olympian of all time. The world sees the gold medals, the endorsement deals, the American hero. What they don't see is a man so lost in depression that he spends 45 days in a treatment facility questioning whether he wants to live anymore. This is the reality of success at the highest level, a reality where external achievement and internal fulfillment often move in opposite directions. But why? Why do people who seemingly have everything still feel empty inside? The answer lies deeper than most realize. It's not about the money, and it's not about the fame. It's about something far more fundamental, something that neuroscience is only now beginning to understand. You see, your brain doesn't care about your bank account. It doesn't care about your Instagram followers or your Academy Awards. What it cares about is something much more primal, your sense of purpose, your sense of identity. Think about it for a moment. When The Rock lost his football career to injury in college, he didn't just lose a sport, he lost his entire identity. When Michael Phelps stepped out of the pool, he didn't just leave competitive swimming, he left behind the only version of himself he'd ever known. This is where most people get it wrong. They look at celebrity depression and think, well, how can they be depressed? They seem to have everything. But that's like looking at a house with beautiful paint and wondering why the foundation is cracking. The truth is, many of today's biggest stars are living a daily contradiction. They're more connected than ever before through social media, yet they're more isolated than ever in their real lives. They're more successful than ever by society standards, yet more disconnected than ever from their authentic selves. And here's what makes this even more fascinating. While some celebrities crumble under the weight of success, others seem to thrive on it. They don't just avoid depression, they appear genuinely unshakable. Take Donald Trump, for example. Love him or hate him, his sense of identity and purpose never wavers. Or David Goggins, who transformed himself from a broken man into someone who seems immune to mental weakness. What do they know that others don't? What's the difference between a celebrity who breaks under pressure and one who becomes stronger because of it? The answer lies at the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science, in the understanding of how our brains create meaning and how we can consciously rewire our neural pathways to build an unbreakable mind. That's what we're about to discover, and what you learn might just change everything you thought you knew about depression, success, and the human mind. Let's step behind the curtain of celebrity life for a moment. Away from the red carpets, away from the carefully curated social media posts, this is where the real story begins. When Dwayne Johnson first experienced depression, he did what millions of others do. He hid it. "I didn't want to do a thing," he recalls. "I didn't want to go anywhere. I was constantly crying."
I left school. The interesting thing at that time is I didn't know what mental health was. I didn't know what depression was. I just knew I didn't want to be there. I went through it again when I got a divorce, but knew what it was at that time. And luckily at that time, I had some friends who I could lean on. Say, hey, I'm feeling a little wobbly now. I got a little struggle happening.
Yet in public, he maintained the persona of the Rock, strong, unshakable, and invincible. Michael Phelps lived in a similar contradiction. While collecting gold medals and breaking world records, he was drowning in a different kind of pool. "I didn't want to be alive," he admits. "I didn't want to see anyone else. I didn't want to talk to anyone else."
Because there are so many of us out there that really are struggling.
But here's what's fascinating. This isn't just about celebrities hiding their pain from the public, it's about something far more fundamental. The gap between who they appear to be and who they feel they are. Neuroscience shows us something remarkable about this phenomenon. When we maintain a facade that doesn't align with our true selves, our brain experiences it as a form of threat. The amygdala, our brain's threat detection center, actually activates, triggering a stress response. In other words, pretending to be someone you're not isn't just emotionally exhausting, it's literally causing your brain to sound alarm bells. Think about that for a moment. How many hours a day do celebrities spend maintaining their public image? How many decisions do they make based not on what they want, but on what their brand demands of them? It's like wearing a mask 24/7. Eventually you start to forget what your real face actually looks like. But here's where it gets really interesting. Some celebrities seem to avoid this trap entirely. They don't wear a mask. They create an authentic identity so powerful that it becomes their reality. David Goggins didn't hide from his pain. He transformed it into his identity. He didn't pretend to be tough. He rebuilt himself from the ground up, creating what he calls the calloused mind. Donald Trump didn't try to be what others wanted. He doubled down on exactly who he is, building an identity so strong that millions of people either love him or they hate him, but few question his commitment to the cause. The difference isn't in their circumstances, it's not in their level of success or the challenges they face. It's about something much more fundamental, something the ancient Stoics understood over 2,000 years ago. These unshakable individuals have done something that most celebrities never manage. They've aligned their external actions with their internal values. They've created what the Stoics call inner citadels, identities so strong that no external circumstance can break them. But this raises an important question. If maintaining a false identity can lead to depression and building an authentic one can prevent it, why do so many people choose the path that leads to pain? The answer lies in understanding how our brains create and maintain our sense of self, and more importantly, how we can consciously reshape it, and that's exactly what we're about to explore.
The number one pick. I, Vince McMahon, choose The Rock.
Oh my God, they're implants. They are.
human brain craves consistency. It needs a stable sense of self to function properly. But what happens when that sense of self is constantly shifting? For Dwayne Johnson, his first major depression hit when his football career ended due to injury. In a single moment, his identity as an athlete, something he'd built his entire life around, was completely shattered. "I had no idea what depression was," Johnson said. "I just knew that one day, everything I thought I was supposed to be was gone." The same pattern appears in Michael Phelps' story. After each Olympics, he found himself asking the same devastating question: who am I without swimming? This isn't just about losing a career, it's about losing your entire sense of self. And here's where neuroscience reveals something crucial. Our brains process identity loss in the same regions that process physical pain. When you lose a core part of your identity, your brain literally experiences it as an injury. The anterior cingulate cortex, the same area that activates when you break a bone, lights up like a Christmas tree. But there's more. Research shows that people with unstable identities are significantly more likely to experience depression. You might be wondering why. And that's because our brains consume massive amounts of energy when trying to maintain a coherent sense of self. Think about it. How much mental energy does it take to constantly reinvent yourself? To wake up every morning wondering which version of you the world needs today? This is where we see a fascinating contrast. Look at someone like David Goggins. He didn't try to escape his past or create multiple identities. Instead, he built a single powerful identity around overcoming challenges. Every obstacle he faces doesn't threaten his sense of self, it reinforces it. The ancient Stoics understood this principle deeply. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote, "Be one person, one and the same, not many-sided." This isn't about limiting yourself. It's about building an identity so solid that it can weather any storm. An identity based not on external achievements or others' expectations of you, but on deeply held values and principles. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, aligning your actions with your true self. Modern neuroscience confirms this wisdom, showing that people with strong, stable identities have better emotional regulation and greater resilience to stress. But here's the crucial question: how do you build such an identity? How do you create a sense of self so strong that no external circumstance, not even global fame or crushing failure, can shake it? The answer lies in understanding something that most people miss entirely: the difference between an identity based on achievement and an identity based on purpose. And that's where our story takes an unexpected turn. There's a fundamental difference between someone who's successful and someone who's mission-driven. Success is about what you achieve. Mission is about who you are. Let's look at Donald Trump. Whether you support him or not, there's something remarkable about his psychological makeup. His entire identity is built around a singular mission: make America great again. It's not just a slogan, it's become his reason for being. When you're truly mission-driven, setbacks don't trigger depression, they fuel determination. Obstacles don't threaten your identity, they reinforce it. Your brain literally processes challenges differently. This is where we see a striking pattern emerge. The celebrities who seem immune to depression aren't just successful, they're driven by something bigger than success. David Goggins didn't just get fit, he created an entirely new identity around pushing human limits. Goggins became more than a name, it became a symbol of relentless determination. When he faces challenges, they don't break him, they become proof of who he is. Now contrast this with our earlier examples. When Dwayne Johnson lost his football career, he lost his mission. And when Michael Phelps stepped away from swimming, he stepped away from his purpose. This is where neuroscience offers a fascinating insight. Research shows that having a clear sense of purpose actually changes your brain's structure. The prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for planning and emotional regulation, becomes more active and develops stronger neural connections. But here's what's really interesting. This isn't just about having any purpose, it's about having what psychologists call a self-transcendent purpose, something bigger than yourself. When Trump talks about making America great, and when Goggins pushes himself to inspire others, they're tapping into something fundamental about how our brains actually work. They're activating neural networks that extend beyond self-preservation into something more meaningful. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus understood this 2,000 years ago, when he wrote that a noble purpose gives meaning to life and gives meaning to death. This isn't just philosophy, it's biology. When you're driven by a mission bigger than yourself, your brain releases different neurotransmitters. Instead of the stress hormones associated with protecting your ego, you produce more serotonin and dopamine, chemicals associated with meaning and motivation. And this brings us to a crucial realization. Maybe depression isn't just about what's wrong with us, maybe it's about what's missing. A mission that makes our struggles meaningful. Think about that for a moment. What if the path to an unbreakable mind isn't about avoiding pain or achieving success? What if it's about finding a purpose so compelling that even pain becomes meaningful? This is where our journey takes an important turn, because understanding this principle is one thing, but actually rewiring your brain to live it, that's where things get interesting. What if I told you that your brain is actually wired for purpose? That beneath all of the neural circuitry dedicated to survival and success, there's a deeper network designed specifically for meaning. Scientists call it the default mode network, a set of brain regions that activate when we think about our place in the world. When this network is properly engaged, depression becomes significantly less likely, and when it's not, we become vulnerable. Let's look at what happens in the brain of someone like David Goggins. When he's pursuing his mission, his neural activity shows a fascinating pattern. Instead of the scattered, anxious firing we often see in depressed brains, we instead see a focused, coordinated set of activity. This is where cutting-edge neuroscience meets ancient wisdom in a remarkable way. The Stoics believed that humans were born for action with purpose. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Every living thing is fulfilled when it follows the path for which it is designed." Modern brain imaging now shows us exactly why this is true. When you're living with a clear purpose, your brain releases a cascade of neurochemicals. Dopamine isn't just triggered by pleasure anymore, it's released when you make progress towards meaningful goals. Serotonin isn't dependent on social status, it flows when you're acting in alignment with your values. Even cortisol, typically known as a stress hormone, becomes a tool for growth rather than a source of damage. But here's what most people miss. This isn't just about having any purpose, it's about having what neuroscientists call an integrated purpose, one that aligns with your core values and identity. Think about Donald Trump again. His mission isn't just a political campaign, it's an expression of his entire identity. Every cell in his brain is aligned with this purpose. There's no gap between who he thinks he is and what he's doing. This is where I want to share something powerful with you. Through my years of research and personal experience with depression, I've discovered that this kind of neural alignment isn't just for celebrities or political figures, it's available to anyone who understands how to access it. In fact, I've developed a comprehensive system that helps people rewire their brains for purpose and meaning. It's called the Unbreakable Mindset System, and it combines ancient Stoic wisdom with cutting-edge neuroscience to help you to build an unshakable sense of purpose. This isn't just another self-help program, it's a science-based approach to restructuring your neural pathways, creating the kind of mental strength that makes depression virtually impossible. I've left a link in the description box below for you to access this series of programs, but before I tell you more about that, let's understand something crucial. How exactly does this rewiring process work, and what's happening in your brain when you shift from survival mode to purpose mode? Because once you actually understand this, everything changes. There's a reason why Stoic philosophy has survived for over 2,000 years, and why it's as relevant today in Hollywood mansions as it was in ancient Rome. The Stoics understood something fundamental about the human mind, something that modern neuroscience is only now starting to confirm. They knew that true strength doesn't come from controlling external circumstances, but instead from building an internal fortress that no external force can breach. Consider this remarkable parallel. When Michael Phelps finally began to overcome his depression, it wasn't by winning more medals, it was by adopting a principle that would have made Marcus Aurelius proud, focusing only on what he could control. The depression never disappears, Phelps reveals, but I've learned to control what I can control. This isn't just a coping mechanism, it's a complete rewiring of neural pathways. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus was born a slave, yet he found unshakable mental freedom when he put things in his world this way. Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control and some things are not. When you truly internalize this principle, something fascinating happens in your brain. The amygdala, your fear center, becomes less reactive. The prefrontal cortex, your rational decision-making center, then strengthens its control. This is exactly what we see in people like David Goggins. He's not immune to pain or hardship. He simply trained his brain to process these challenges differently. Every obstacle becomes, as Marcus Aurelius would say, fuel for the fire. But here's what's truly revolutionary. The Stoics weren't just philosophers. They were in theory the world's first cognitive behavioral therapists. They developed specific practices for rewiring the brain, such as negative visualization, imagining worst-case scenarios to build resilience, and present moment awareness, focusing on the now instead of anxious future thinking, and voluntary discomfort, deliberately facing challenges to strengthen mental toughness. Modern neuroscience shows these practices actually change your brain structure. They strengthen neural pathways associated with resilience while weakening those linked to anxiety and depression. Think about what this actually means. The same principles that helped Roman emperors maintain mental stability while ruling an empire can actually help today's celebrities and you to build an unbreakable mind. This is where ancient wisdom and modern science create something powerful, something that can transform how you experience every moment of your life. Which brings us to the most important question: how do you actually implement these principles into your own life? How do you take these timeless truths and use them to rewire your own neural pathways? The answer lies in understanding how to bridge the gap between knowledge and practice, between knowing what to do and actually rewiring your brain to do it automatically. And that's exactly what we're about to explore. When Dwayne Johnson finally overcame his third bout of depression, he discovered something profound. It wasn't about changing his circumstances, it was about changing how his brain processed those circumstances. This is where neuroscience reveals something remarkable. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on your thoughts and behaviors. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, but the Stoics have understood this for many years. Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in mind, Marcus Aurelius wrote. Modern brain imaging shows that he was literally correct. Your neural pathways strengthen or weaken based on what you consistently think and do. Think about your brain like a forest. Your thoughts and behaviors are like paths through that forest. The more you use a particular path, the more defined it becomes. Depression isn't just a feeling, it's a well-worn path your brain has learned to take. But here's the revolutionary part. You can create new paths. When David Goggins transformed himself from a depressed, overweight man into the embodiment of mental toughness, he wasn't just changing his habits, he was literally carving new neural pathways. Every time he chose discomfort over comfort, every time he pushed through when his mind said stop, he was physically rewiring his brain. The same process happens in reverse. Every time a celebrity lets negative thoughts spiral, every time they react to stress with anxiety, they're deepening those problematic neural pathways. This is where the fusion of Stoic wisdom and neuroscience becomes transformative. The Stoics gave us the blueprint for which paths to create. Neuroscience shows us exactly how to create them. Let me show you how this works in practice. When you face a challenge, your brain immediately looks for familiar paths to take. So if you've trained it to respond with, "This is terrible," that's the path that it's going to choose. But if you've built a path of, "This is an opportunity to prove my strength," that becomes your automatic response. This isn't just positive thinking, it's neural engineering. Through my personal journey helping people to overcome depression and build unshakable minds, I've developed a systematic approach to this rewiring process. It's called the 21-Day Neural Reset Program, and it's designed to help you to create new neural pathways methodically and scientifically. This program combines daily brain training exercises, guided neural pattern interruption, and specific mental practices that strengthen the pathways associated with resilience while weakening those linked to depression. You can access that program amongst others via a link I've left in the description box below, but whether you choose to explore that program or not, understand this fundamental truth. Your brain will wire itself according to your consistent patterns of thought and behavior. The only question is whether you'll let this happen by default or take conscious control of the process. The path to an unbreakable mind isn't about eliminating negative thoughts or pretending to be happy all of the time. It's about building new neural pathways that process both success and failure, both pleasure and pain, in ways that make you stronger. This is how you build a mind that doesn't just resist depression, it becomes literally incapable of staying depressed. But to achieve this, you need to understand one final crucial piece of the puzzle. When Michael Phelps stood at his lowest point, contemplating suicide, he wasn't just battling depression, he was battling an identity crisis. When swimming was gone, he recalls, "I didn't know who I was." This brings us to the most crucial aspect of building an unbreakable mind, creating an identity that's not bound to external achievements or circumstances. Look at the transformation of David Goggins. He didn't just change his habits, he completely reconstructed his identity. Goggins became more than a name, it became a symbol of relentless perseverance. When faced with challenges, he doesn't ask, "Can I handle this?" Instead, he thinks, "This is who I am." This is where most approaches to mental health fall short. They focus on changing thoughts and behaviors without addressing the fundamental architecture of identity. Think about it like this. Your identity is like the operating system of your brain. You can run all of the positive thinking apps you want, but if the operating system is flawed, those apps will keep crashing. The Stoics understood this. When Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do," he wasn't just offering motivational advice, he was describing a process of identity reconstruction that modern neuroscience now validates. Research shows that when you build a strong, purpose-driven identity, your brain actually processes challenges differently. The amygdala, your fear center, becomes less reactive. The prefrontal cortex, your rational decision-making center, becomes more engaged. But here's the key. This identity can't be based on external achievements or circumstances. It must be built on principles and values that you can embody regardless of what's happening around you. Donald Trump didn't build his identity on winning elections, he built it on being a force for change. Whether you agree with him or not, this identity remains intact whether he wins or loses. This is where the real transformation begins. When you build an identity around principles rather than outcomes, something remarkable happens. Challenges no longer threaten your sense of self, they become opportunities to express it. Think about how this could change everything. Instead of avoiding difficult situations, you seek them out as chances to embody your principles. Rather than fearing failure, you see it as proof of your commitment to growth. And when faced with obstacles, you don't ask why me, but instead, how can I use this? This isn't just philosophy, it's practical neuroscience. When you consistently act from a strong principle-based identity, you create new neural pathways that make this way of being automatic. The path to an unbreakable mind isn't about becoming someone new, it's about building an identity so solid, so aligned with timeless principles, that it becomes impossible to break. This is how you move beyond merely surviving to truly thriving. And that's exactly what we'll explore in our final chapter. Look at Dwayne Johnson today. He's not just surviving, he truly is thriving. And that's not because he escaped depression, but because he transformed his relationship with it. Mental health is something we all need to work on, he says. It's not a destination, it's a daily practice. This is the ultimate revelation. Building an unbreakable mind isn't about becoming immune to pain or challenges, it's about developing the capacity to use everything life throws at you as fuel for growth. Think about how Michael Phelps transformed from someone contemplating suicide to becoming one of the world's leading mental health advocates. He didn't just overcome depression, he integrated it into his mission. Every struggle became part of a larger purpose. This is what the Stoics meant when they said the obstacle is the way. Every challenge and every moment of darkness becomes an opportunity to express and strengthen who you truly are. But here's what most people miss. This transformation isn't just philosophical, it's neurological. When you consistently respond to challenges with purpose-driven action, you literally rewire your brain's stress response system. Research shows that people who view stress as enhancing rather than debilitating have different neural activation patterns. Their brains process challenges as opportunities for growth rather than threats to survival. This is the essence of thriving, not the absence of difficulties, but instead the presence of meaning in how you face them. Consider how different this is from our culture's typical approach to mental health. Instead of trying to eliminate negative emotions, you learn to use them. Rather than avoiding discomfort, you welcome it as a growth opportunity. And instead of seeking happiness, you pursue meaning. This is how you build a truly unbreakable mind. Not by becoming hardened and emotionless, but by developing the capacity to find purpose and meaning in everything you experience. Every challenge you face is an opportunity. Every moment of darkness contains the seeds of growth. The celebrities we've discussed today, from The Rock to Michael Phelps, aren't special because they never face darkness. They're special because they've learned to use that darkness as fuel for their mission. This is available to all of us. The same principles that help world-class athletes and entertainers to build unshakable minds can help you to transform your own life. Remember that depression isn't your identity and it's not your destiny. It's simply feedback that something in your life needs to shift. And with the right tools, the fusion of ancient wisdom and modern science, you can make that shift. The path to an unbreakable mind isn't about escaping your struggles. It's about transforming your relationship with them. It's about building an identity so strong, a purpose that's so clear that nothing can shake you from your path. This is how you move from surviving to truly thriving. This is how you truly build an unbreakable mind. The only question that remains is, are you ready to begin building a truly unbreakable mindset that can weather any storm? This is Alex Unbreakable, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side of strength and resilience.